Aloha 452 students. Hannah here for your week 12 video. Apologies for not getting it up sooner. I've been really sick and I lost my voice and I just got caught up. So the first thing I want to point out is that if you haven't taken a look at La Lima recently, you'll notice that the rest of the semester is fully planned out. So you now have access to all readings, videos, and assignments from now until the end of the semester. So take advantage of that and plan accordingly for the rest of the semester. All right, so week 12, we are covering sex work and how that relates to family and relationships. So the main thing that you're going to be doing in terms of readings and videos this week is watching the documentary Whore's Glory. And in the documentary, there are women in 3 different brothels portrayed. So I encourage you to think about how their families and their interpersonal relationships are talked about. So I think that's really interesting because, in my humble opinion, I think in the US and our media, sex workers are often portrayed as these women existing in vacuums where they don't have family and they don't have a significant other. But yet in Whore's Glory, we see that these women are real people that have families and relationships and problems. And so I think that it's important to think about how the media represents sex workers in this documentary and in these countries versus in the United States and in Western society. I also encourage you to think about survival sex work. And so what that means is, what that phrase means is participating in sex work because you're forced to in order to survive. And so you'll see some of this happening in Whore's Glory, and you also see that happening here in Hawaii, where women are being forced to prostitute in order to meet their basic needs. So in order to have food, clothing, shelter, and all of that. And so especially when we think about white second wave feminism, oftentimes these women are saying, oh, sex work is exploitive and women shouldn't participate in sex work. But when we think about poor women having to choose between eating or having a place to live or not because they're not participating in sex work, that's survival sex work. You're participating in sex work in order to survive and meet your basic needs. And so from a white feminist perspective, that's a choice, right? You're choosing to participate in sex work. But if we think a little more critically about survival sex work, we see that these women simply would not live and would not survive if they didn't participate in the sex trade because they wouldn't be able to eat or have shelter. As we think about sex work locally, there's been a lot of effort at the state capitol during the legislative session to pass laws that have to do with sex trade locally. So we know that there's a lot of sex tourism in Hawaii. We have some of the highest rates of sex tourism. That means that there are folks, but mostly men, coming to Hawaii specifically to pay prostitutes for sex. And so there are a lot of grassroots organizations who are advocating for stronger laws that would criminalize sex trade more. And although the goal is to penalize Johns, so penalize the people who are buying prostitutes, what most often happens is that women also enter the criminal system as a result of further stricter, stronger laws. And so, well, of course, we want to penalize Johns and we want to eradicate the sex trade and make it so that women have other ways of meeting their basic needs and not needing to participate in the sex and in survival sex and the sex trade. There are also some issues with passing laws in terms of women perhaps being more likely to enter the criminal system as a result of those stronger laws. So I encourage you to think about all of that. But as always, take an intersectional approach and think about the lived experiences of those folks who are part of the sex trade. So, we shouldn't just be thinking about scholars who research the sex trade. We should be thinking about women who have been prostitutes and what their experiences are and what they want in terms of legislation. So do they want stronger laws, or do they think decriminalizing the sex trade is going to make the world of survival sex safer? So there are also feminist advocates who say that if you decriminalize sex work, it will make it safer for the women who are prostitutes, and they will be able to get better health services, more STI testing, safer conditions. They would be able to hold Johns more accountable in terms of condom use and that sort of thing. So these are the types of things you should be thinking about, especially as you think locally about the issue of the sex industry. That's basically all I have this week. Just be consistent and diligent about working on your final paper and your poster, because that's due in the next few weeks. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email me at hannahli@hawaii.edu. Have a great week, guys.